In recent years, the gaming industry has been absolutely flooded with on-demand subscription services, all vying to claim the throne as the so-called Netflix for video games. Xbox Game Pass, PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus, EA Play, Ubisoft Plus, the list is extensive and it just keeps going on and on. But while this subscription model has really caught on within the last decade or so, the concept of providing games on demand directly to players for a monthly fee dates back way longer than you think. Over 45 years. In 1980, Mattel introduced the Play Cable for the Intellivision, a service which allowed console owners to download up to 20 new games a month through their cable TV wires. It was a really advanced, way ahead of its time concept.
Every month on Play Cable, you'll play 15 lifelike Intellivision games for less each month than you'd pay for a single game cartridge.
Sounds great, except almost nobody used it. And the service died just 3 years later, along with most of the industry during the video game crash. Flash forward to the 16-bit console wars, both Sega and Nintendo were experimenting with very different services of their own. Sega's Japan-only MegaNet fizzled out within just a year, but they did see mild success later on with the advent of the Sega Channel here in the United States. It worked very similarly to how Play Cable did, and peaked at around 250,000 subscribers despite high costs and a release date of December 1994. Very late in the Genesis' life, this is after the 32X. Nintendo, on the other hand, harnessed the power of satellite broadcasting for the Satellaview service, only for the Super Famicom. It had a decent audience, but it debuted even later than the Sega Channel, eventually ceasing services in June of 2000, well into the life of the Nintendo 64. So by the mid-2000s, three things had become abundantly clear. The video games on-demand subscription model had not yet been perfected. However, the market was pretty wide open, and more people were buying into this new thing called broadband internet. Which brings us to the subject of today's retrospective. GameTap.
The fighting never ends at GameTap, where you can play hundreds of the greatest video games right from your broadband-connected PC.
A service which was truly ahead of its time. At one point, GameTap was a rather impressive offering. Hundreds of games from big-name publishers like Capcom, Konami, Ubisoft, and Sega. I know it's an overused phrase, but GameTap truly fit the mold as being the Netflix for games before Netflix was even what it is today. At the time, Netflix was only delivering DVDs through the mail. But like the services which came before it, GameTap wasn't destined to last. It burned bright and burned out within just a few years. So today, come with me on this exploration of GameTap, the rise and fall, and what it was like to be a subscriber in the mid-2000s. I would know. I was one myself. So with that, let's look back on what happened to GameTap. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this video, and I'm super excited to share this with you. I think this is a great story that not a lot of people have heard in the gaming world, at least as of late. Really quickly, I do want to say, if you enjoy this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you have not already. It goes a long way to help the channel. Also, excuse me, I sound a little sick in this video because I was. Anyway, that's enough of this. Let's talk about how GameTap came to be. By the dawn of the new millennium, Turner Broadcasting System had grown from a single television station in the Atlanta area to a media conglomerate. They launched CNN, Cartoon Network, TNT, TBS, Turner Classic Movies, and in 1996 they shook the media world by merging with Time Warner, all under the tutelage of one Ted Turner.
Should we give Elmo a bat?
Yeah!
Should we give Telly a bat?
Yeah!
Should we give Ernie a bat?
No!
But in April of 2005, Turner announced a new $27 million venture into uncharted territory, a concept reportedly pitched by Turner employee Blake Lewin. The idea for GameTap was to license classic games from established publishers and offer them to players through a per-month subscription model. Games would be delivered over digital distribution, downloaded and stored on the user's machine, and launched through a proprietary GameTap app. For what it's worth, Steam hadn't become the marketplace giant it is today. For these retro titles, GameTap would develop an in-house emulator for all of them and handle the brunt of getting them all up and running. The process of licensing media for their services was nothing new for Turner. Channels like Classic Movies and TNT licensed old films all the time to expand offerings and attract new audiences. But Turner was a new face in the video gaming world, and in their eyes, GameTap actually worked to the advantage of legacy publishers. Retro gaming didn't have the same draw that it does now, so GameTap offered a way for publishers to make money off of their back catalog, and they could focus on the latest and greatest that they were making in-house. At the time, Turner Executive Vice President Dennis Quinn said, quote, "While the film can go from theater to premium channel, from DVD to Turner Classic Movies, games, even great ones, have had a much shorter lifespan. Publishers are embracing GameTap because we are giving the kind of longevity to gaming titles now enjoyed by movies, songs, and books." Really not a bad assessment. And unlike something like the Sega Channel, Turner wasn't a console manufacturer or a major player in the gaming market. They didn't carry the baggage of major rivalries. They didn't break any agreements to make a PlayStation or have a heated rivalry with Nintendo. Not like they were ever going to get Nintendo games, but you know what I mean. So in the months leading up to GameTap's launch, Turner and Time Warner made sure that everybody knew it. They launched an aggressive marketing campaign flooding the airwaves and the internet with ads about GameTap's initial offering of what they expected to be about 300 games.
Live to die again at GameTap.
1 month after GameTap's initial announcement, the list of licensees was unveiled. Activision, Atari, Eidos Interactive, Intellivision, Midway, Namco, Sega, Ubisoft. It was a pretty good list. 300 games would grace the service at launch, most being retro titles, but there was a concerted effort to get some more recent stuff in there. This was 2005, so games like Splinter Cell and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 weren't that old. However, the retro offerings were much more robust, including titles like Pong, Pac-Man, Sonic, and really a whole host of other Sega games. In my opinion, Sega was one of GameTap's most important allies and a defining face for the service. Sega provided an extensive number of titles from the Master System, the Dreamcast, the Saturn, the Genesis, 32X, all of them. And GameTap returned the favor by plastering Sega all over its marketing wherever they could. Remember, this was 2005 and Sega was still in a period of transition itself, navigating from a console manufacturer to exclusively a third-party software developer. Officially billed as a broadband entertainment network, GameTap soft launched at the beginning of October 2005 for a price of $14.95 per month, just over $24 in today's money. The soft launch period lasted for 2 weeks, and the official public release came on October 16th, 2005. That same day, GameTap had another big announcement. Even more publishers had just signed on, including the likes of EA, Take-Two, and Capcom. Within a few months, Interplay, SNK, Rivermore, and a whole bunch of others added their names to that dotted line, and the GameTap era was officially underway. That was what you would have seen when you launched the GameTap Player application from your Windows 2000 or XP-powered machine around the time of launch. In this section of the video, I'm going to try my best to paint a picture of what it was like to use this iteration of the service. This is the one that most people probably used and remember. Pictures and video of the interface, the GameTap launcher, I will say are pretty hard to come by, and a lot of it is very much a product of the time. But trust me, it actually ran much better than this. So for a lot of the footage in this video, if it looks suspiciously clear, it's because I recorded new gameplay that doesn't look so bad. But these are mostly games I remember playing on GameTap, and they were all on the service, they ran better. Mini disclaimer over. But for all intents and purposes, the golden age of GameTap looked like this. Designed by Bo De Silva and Dale Herrigstad, GameTap's user interface was, and still is, pretty stunning in my opinion. Everything is circular, radial, with the focal point being the main carousel games at the center of your sightline. Above that, you can see filtering and search options, and down below are 3 distinct sections, which I'll go through right now. On the left, My GameTap served as your personal profile and settings. You can configure controllers, parental settings, account information, password stuff, and more. You know, your basic settings menu, your profile, nothing really thrilling here. The Game Vault is the star of the show. You can flip through games new and old and download each of them with the click of a button. How long it took? Well, that depended on what game you wanted to play. Retro games only took a minute or two to load, but more modern PC games took forever. At the time, my PC looked like this, and it just couldn't handle anything newer than Crazy Taxi or Choo Choo Rocket. So when I recall my memories of GameTap, excuse my bias towards them. Anyway, you could filter games by platform, year, and the service regularly offered curated lists of titles like new editions, GameTap's picks, or the best games to play online. Yes, GameTap had online play. For a huge chunk of games on offer that had multiplayer, GameTap offered online play with friends or randoms. Some of my favorite memories come from meeting strangers online and bonding over a game of Gunstar Heroes or Metal Slug 4. And I know I said this before, but for a kid under the age of 10, GameTap left a lifelong impression on me, and likely thousands of other kids at the time. This was really my first exposure to retro gaming. I unlocked new memories just writing this video, and I can tell you now that it was on GameTap the first time I had ever played Sonic the Hedgehog, Gunstar Heroes, Vector Man, Toe Jam and Earl, Earthworm Jim, Prince of Persia, and every single Metal Slug game. All of it was on GameTap. And by all accounts, these games were pretty well optimized. They ran fine. The emulation team really cared about creating a quality experience, and it was mightily impressive how they got some of these games up and running on such early PC hardware. The GameTap team even created a functioning Sega Saturn emulator in the mid-2000s, which is quite the achievement. That retro gaming experience really was top-notch, and during the golden age from 2005 to 2008, so was the GameTap catalog. Sega, of course, showed out in full force. SNK offered up a whole lot of that fantastic Neo Geo lineup. Konami added Castlevania and Silent Hill 2. Capcom lent over Mega Man and a million different Street Fighter titles, and that's just scratching the surface. By August of 2006, GameTap was touting over 600 games available on the service, and by November 15th, 2007, Civilization 4 became the 1,000th game added. Even some AAA PC releases at the time launched day and date on the service, games like Tomb Raider Legend and Clive Barker's Jericho. But perhaps GameTap's largest contribution to video game history was their partnership with several smaller developers to create wholly original games. They called them GameTap Originals. The most notable being in 2006 when GameTap partnered with a fledgling developer known as Telltale Games to release Sam & Max Save the World, a revival of the graphic adventure series from LucasArts. GameTap saw Telltale's episodic format as a way to keep people subscribed to the service. The game did well enough to prove that Telltale's unique storytelling format worked with gamers. Sam & Max eventually got a season 2, and Telltale would go on to outlive GameTap and create the only game that's ever made me cry. GameTap also helped bankroll Alice director American McGee's title Grimm, which released over 20 plus episodes throughout 2008. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the Game Vault, but there's still one more tab here we haven't talked about, and I have a lot of fond memories with it. In 2005, this was known as the Mediaplex, offering a range of animated short-form content, skits, commercials, and interviews. But in 2006, it got a major rebrand as GameTap TV, expanding its offerings to include more retrospective content and a whole bunch of Cartoon Network shows, which was conveniently already owned by Turner. I fondly remember going to GameTap TV a lot, and I think they did a pretty good job of expanding the value of the service through video. Computer Lab was always one of my favorites, even if it was kind of stupid.
Wow, you could probably boil water on that thing.
Jill, look, you were right. I made ramen.
Oh, wow.
Jill, check it out. I made mac and cheese. Get it? Mac and cheese?
Oh, I do get it. Wow, can I have some?
That's the exact same thing as ramen noodles. I mean, they're both noodles.
And the Day in the Extra Life videos were always good for a quick laugh.
Did you catch Sopranos last night? Nah, I was doing laundry. Tony got really mad. Did he kill anyone? Nah. I think the shrink's mellowing him out. Too bad.
Thankfully, a ton of this content is still preserved on GameTap's YouTube channel. You can go watch it right now. It was abundantly clear that the production team behind all of this really loved gaming and they loved what they were doing. I credit GameTap's retrospectives for sparking my interest in gaming history, and maybe some of the other content on there for helping form my sense of humor.
Any chance of you getting me a latte?
Sure, venti or grande?
I don't know. Which one's the large?
I'm not sure.
They even revived Space Ghost Coast to Coast 2 years after it had been canceled on Adult Swim, and a few of these episodes are still lost to this day. And that, everybody, was the golden age of GameTap. For just $15 a month, it wasn't such a bad deal, right? Sure, they made it notoriously hard to cancel, but why would you want to cancel when you had all of this on offer? I'm not really sure when I unsubscribed from GameTap. I had a feeling my mom forgot she was still paying for it at some point. But all good things must come to an end. And this golden age, unfortunately, didn't last very long. The signs of decline were becoming quite apparent. Now, I didn't dig through any financial records, but as early as 2006, it became apparent that GameTap felt the need to make a change. In the same March 2006 press release where they announced the GameTap TV rebrand, they also announced a big price cut from $15 a month to $10 a month. In October of 2006, GameTap annual memberships were on special for $59.95 for 1 year, which they went around touting as being less than the cost of a single new retail game. In May of 2007, GameTap dropped its single membership option entirely and replaced it with a 3-tiered system. Free visitor users could play a select few games with ads. Green members were also free and had ads, but they also had registered with the GameTap's account system. They got a few more titles, and gold members, like previously, had access to everything. Also in 2007, GameTap attempted to revive the dead MMO Mist Online Uru Live, and it did not go well. By December, GameTap's expiring agreements with EA, Atari, and Interplay led to 70-plus games being removed from the service, dropping it back below a total of 1,000 titles. That wasn't exactly cause for panic. When you operate a licensing model like this, that kind of stuff happens. Nowadays, this is way more common and you see it on Netflix and Game Pass all the time. But what was cause for panic was the complete shutdown of GameTap's editorial team and GameTap TV in May of 2008. The news division was supposed to compete with the likes of IGN. It didn't even last a year. Something big was about to happen, and it did on August 6th, 2008. That was the day Turner publicly announced its intentions to divest from GameTap. They wanted to sell. Turner's quarterly report attributed an $18 million tax write-off to the decision, and a Turner spokesperson said there was, quote, considerable marketplace interest from possible suitors. And I guess they weren't kidding, because just over a month later, Turner signed a deal to sell GameTap to French gaming distributor Miserably. At the time, they tried to spin it as an expansion into Europe. And yes, previously GameTap was only available in the US and Canada, but it seems like the dominoes really started to fall fast following the completion of the transition period in early 2009. In March, GameTap shut down the GameTap player. All traffic would be moved to the GameTap website using a new browser plugin, which didn't work with 64-bit systems for a long time and removed a ton of key features that were previously standard fare for everybody playing. This video from GameTap's YouTube channel around that time shows off their progress in implementing full screen support and save states to the website, both of which are just, you expect those from an emulator, right? It just makes me think, why would they move to the website without those features being in place? Never mind that tons of subscribers couldn't even play the games because their computers were too new. What a mess. And this is just me and my opinion, but look at the quality of this video. It's a shaky cam mess. It's a far cry from the fantastic production quality that GameTap was constantly holding itself to under Turner. These new owners made lots of little changes. They reshuffled the sub-tiers again and seemingly failed to keep up with licensing deals in the process. September of 2010 marked a major loss. Sega, Konami, and Television and Taito all pulled their games from the service, marking an end to that huge partnership with Sega that really led GameTap out of the starting gate. 1 month later, Miserably shut down all US operations, ending all ties with previous Turner staff. They announced a concerted effort to rebrand and move GameTap away from retro games. They even talked about changing the name, though that never quite materialized. Thus, the final years of GameTap were relatively quiet. Licenses continued to expire, the game list remained rather stagnant, and although the service did have a few good partners left, Take-Two especially, they had some games like BioShock, Batman Arkham City, and NBA 2K13, but for every quality title, it seems like there was 3 or 4 shovelware games to help fill the space. Taking a look through the Wayback Machine in these final years of GameTap, and it's a shadow of what it once was. Finally, in October of 2015, 10 years after the original release, Miserably decided to quietly shut down GameTap for good. The GameTap.com website was shut down, and the URL, still owned by Miserably, now redirects to GamesPlanet, their online distribution storefront. So, what went wrong? Why did Turner want out from GameTap after just a few years? Well, we could speculate about it all day, but thankfully we just received a little bit of inside information which gives us a better glimpse. Frank Cifaldi is the founder of the Video Game History Foundation, a wonderful organization dedicated to archiving and preserving games and media surrounding the industry. But years before he founded the VGHF, Cifaldi worked at GameTap as an editorial director and a community manager. And just a few months ago, he shared this post-mortem 20 years later about GameTap's demise. Simply put, he said the gaming world just probably wasn't ready for this. Cifaldi writing in part, quote, "I think by the time I left, subscriptions were $5 a month and still bleeding. What the data told me was that people didn't particularly need access to a lot of games at once. They just wanted to play specific titles, and if we didn't continue meeting those specific needs, they would leave." Games were still expensive investments. Individual libraries were small, and yet still, they didn't want to pay $5 a month for hundreds of titles. Cifaldi also noted how players usually didn't spend more than a few minutes playing retro games, backing up the sentiment that retro gaming as a whole just wasn't in vogue like it is now. Quote, "What we saw is that players basically did one of two things. They either played the larger AAA PC games to completion, or they channel surfed and rarely stuck to anything." Finally, Cifaldi noted how the whole operation probably wasn't profitable. That's just my interpretation of his words here, so do not cite that sentiment to him. But in the same thread, he writes, quote, "As content providers, the only levers we had to pull were continuing to add more content. So we just kept pushing new games, sometimes like 10 titles in a week, which was incredibly expensive from both a licensing and tech perspective. The new signups from these didn't keep pace with cancellations. The whole company as a whole way overspent on licensing deals, creating original video content, executive salaries, and even starting an IGN clone for some reason, which didn't help, but it probably wasn't what killed the thing." Again, I could spend an hour here speculating on all of the things that went wrong, but this firsthand account is the most valuable piece of information that we have gotten in years in trying to answer this question. Shout out to Frank for that thread. Really insightful stuff for the few of us who think back very fondly on GameTap in those golden years where it was running at full steam. With that, I want to open it up to you guys. Do you have any memories of GameTap? Were you a subscriber? Do you at least remember seeing all of the advertisements? Let me know in the comments and let's talk. Let's start a discussion. But for this video, that is pretty much all I have. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. It goes a long way, only takes a second and helps the channel a ton. But with that, everyone, my name is Evan. I hope you enjoyed again. Have a good one.